Welcome to Scoop World Order. It is Monday night. We are here. We have official visits are gone. Ryan Day is in Montana on vacation. All the coaches are gone for 3 weeks. This is the fastest 3 weeks of the year on the calendar for these coaches. It's their last 3 weeks of vacation. Before they go about 4 months without a true day off, they might get it one day off during the bye week, but it is not very much downtime once August is for these coaches. They're on vacation. So we're going to talk a little bit about what went down at official visits. Some big-time prospects that Ohio State is in on it that visited elsewhere, namely Alabama. Going to break that down, and we're going to break down the quarterback race. We're also going to take your questions. So if you guys enjoy this, as always, we appreciate you guys. Click that like button. Click subscribe. We appreciate that. We are racing towards 20,000 subscribers, so thank you so much. We're adding about 700 a month right now. I'd like to get to 1,000 a month, so keep spreading the good word. Send it to your friends, your families, your favorite Buckeye companions you watch the games with. Again, we appreciate you guys spreading the word. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys shouting out where you're from. We had some crazy ones. We had Florida. We had Indonesia. We've had people all over the place. It's crazy. India watching, a lot of Ohio, a lot of Florida, the normal spots, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee was on there. So we appreciate that. Love when you guys shout out where you're from. So thank you guys always for tuning in and get some questions fired up. We want to see some good questions in here tonight. We can take some questions. This is a little bit of a time where we're going to do some more Q&A stuff as we lead into training camp. So get your questions fired up in the chat. Super chats always get answers. If you really want something that you want to know, the super chats are always answerable. So we appreciate you for that. That being said, going to bring in my good friend Nevada Buck. Nevada, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. It's so much fun being on the board. The board. I've been on boards for 25 years, and boards used to be like dead during the off season. There's no off season anymore. It just seems like it just runs from spring ball into summer conditioning into fall camp into football into playoffs into recruiting, and with the transfer portal and with other things, man, it keeps it spicy year round. So, boy, it seems like we're in mid-season form right now. Lots of stuff going on, lots of things going on recruiting, lots of things going on in summer conditioning. So, yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, the way the calendar sets up with the official visits in the summer, it really amplifies the amount of news, the number of commitments, early signing day. I think the camps are kind of less and less, and the official visits are more and more of the news because you get kids on campus because you can pay for them to come. So that's a huge deal. And that is the official visits in the summer is something you're still getting used to because it is very strange. Like, again, when I worked in 2012 there, we didn't have this, thank God. So we always had a little bit of time off on the weekends. But these coaches, man, they're burning the candle at both ends with this. Is it still kind of weird to you that these kids are coming in the summer?
Yeah, no, it's weird. And like I said, as fans, this is one of those changes that people just have to, get used to. And what I always like to do is kind of use game theory on this and kind of look through, well, what are the implications of this? What are the implications of moving these visits to summer? And, for Ohio State, we used to sweat those, late November for the Michigan game or December visits or, heaven forbid, January visits are coming up to, signing day. And now everything's moved up. The calendar's moved up. Everything's going faster. You've got that early signing day. And, official visits and taking care of business it's a summer activity. And as you said, that's a profound change. It is taking some getting used to for old dogs like myself. But I think for Ohio State, it's a net positive. Ohio State gets a chance to figure out where they are, earlier in the recruiting cycle. And in case they miss out on anybody, they can kind of move on through their list and, continue recruiting guys. But Ohio State recruiting's, going strong right now. And it's all happening during the summer. So, yeah, definitely some changes.
Yeah, I think it's been one of those things that's a huge benefit for Ohio State. I'm just going to be honest because you get the guys on campus, you're likely going to have great weather unless there's a rainstorm, but they're not coming for that Michigan game where it potentially could be snowy or freezing cold or gloomy. So I think getting these kids up here in the summer, school's out, so that's a little bit of a detriment. You don't get to see the student body as much, but, you take them downtown. They still get to see young people. It's still fun. But the biggest thing is, like I said, the weather is a plus. I think, frankly, in my opinion, it's a big benefit for Ohio State because we're recruiting nationally so much with the kids from Georgia, Texas, California, Florida. You don't have to compete with them having a Friday night football game because that's something that's really tough is when you have a kid play Friday night in like, Dylan Rayola Friday night in Arizona, or a kid like that, and then he has to take a red eye after the game to get to Columbus at 8 a.m. or whatever. All those kids from the West Coast, it's tough to get them in for a visit for a game until they're out of the playoffs. And that's usually a late game, could be the Michigan game. But if you don't have that home Michigan game, then they're coming in for like the Purdue game or the Michigan, whatever the late season home, final home game is. And I just think that for the coaches, it's great to knock out the official visits for the kids that are committed. Because then you don't have to worry about doing it in the fall. Because the official visits are a chore. They suck to do for these coaches. They're a necessary evil because you got to go cater to the kids and take the parents to dinner and have the players take the kids out and all that. But when you're in season, it's just so much harder because you got to get ready to play Penn State on Saturday. You got to get ready to play Michigan on Saturday, and whatever the biggest game is, the hardest game on your schedule at home is. That's the one that all the kids want to come watch. So you got to cater to some 5-star defensive end. It's probably the last time you're going to see him, or offensive tackle before signing day. And then you also have to worry about beating Michigan, and beating Michigan or beating Penn State is always the number one task, or whoever the big home game is. So it's nice to be able to knock it out in the summer where you don't have the stress of getting ready for a major test, a major home game planning, meeting with your players, and you don't have to balance that as much. We're going to talk a little bit about.
No, hold on. I wanted to circle back on one thing on that, because I think your point about weather is such a smart point, and I've never heard anybody making that point before. And I think it's spot on. Especially think about all the kids that you just talked about, where you're recruiting from the Sun Belt, from Florida, from Georgia, from Texas, from California. They're not used to the bad weather. And when you come out, and no matter what they say, it doesn't matter, this and that. If it's 19 degrees and gloomy, and we've all looked at the recruiting calendar and said, man, I hope we have good weather for this weekend when we got all these kids coming in. I guarantee it's cost us some recruits all the time. And I think that's such a smart point. And I think for Ohio State, it gives you really the opportunity to, as you said, to put your best foot forward and see Columbus in the best possible light, which is 70 degrees and sunny, or maybe a light rain or whatever it is. But the weather's not going to be one of those things where the kids out there going, man, I ain't playing in this. Even if they know it, even if they all have the internet and television and they know that weather can be bad up in the Midwest, it's different hearing about it than have to sit through it or experiencing it, or trying to go out on a Saturday night when it's 11 degrees out and everybody's freezing to death. No, I think it's a really smart point. And I suppose, Kirk, you made a really smart point. You get a cookie.
I'm telling you, man, like it's, when you're on the staff, like when I used to be on the staff and we'd have some star coming up from Florida or from Texas, like you're using every aerosol can you can to get a hole in the ozone over Columbus to try to make it a little bit warmer. Because these kids get off the plane, man, and it's 11 degrees and snowy. And, the thing is you get to lend them clothes. You lend them like a winter coat, and you hand them this winter coat that weighs 15 pounds. And it's like you're in Antarctica Explorer. Like, it's not optimal. It's a bad start. And when you're on these visits, man, it's like you're walking across eggshells. Like I remember, we had kids in and it would be snowy, miserable. They sit there. God forbid you lose. I mean, we've hosted kids on official visits where we've lost the game. And then you got to go out to dinner with them afterwards. And it's like you're in like a funeral home eating dinner because you just lost your game. The kids probably had a miserable time because he's freezing. It can't go any worse. Where it's like, these summer visits, everything is just chill. These coaches know that, they're counting down the minutes until they can get out of here and go on vacation with their families for 3 weeks and try to build that battery up and build up that goodwill with their families. Because once August hits, you're gone. And these wives all call themselves football widows. And it's because the husbands are just gone. Basically, they're gone for, 4 months, and you'll see them a little bit at 10 o'clock at night before you fall asleep in bed. And then they're gone at 5 a.m. heading back to the Woody Hayes. But yeah, I just, the summer thing is a huge benefit for Ohio State. They take them to Hyde Park. Then they go down, on Saturday, they always have lunch at Town Hall, which is a Buckeye Scoop sponsor. It's the best place to eat at in Columbus. And, it's got great food, pretty girls everywhere. It's open air. It's like a perfect vibe for these kids to see college kids, college girls. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, I mean, they're going to take them to like a happening spot that's active and it's not some dead, crappy place. Cause we used to take them to like Eddie George's Bar and Grill, which is now defunct. And I remember like anything could go wrong with these meals. So we had Eddie George's used to have this huge, like 30-ounce steak. It was like, or a 27-ounce steak. So it was a 27-ounce Eddie George, like T-Bone, Porterhouse, whatever. And Curtis Grant, who was the number 2 player in the country behind Jadeveon Clowney, ordered his well done. And I remember it took like an hour. It took like 70 minutes for that steak to get brought to the table. And like I was already done eating. So I got the same steak. I got it rare. So I'm sitting there and I was like, we're never going to see Curtis Grant again. Like the number 2. I mean, at the time when you watched this video, you thought he was like the next Ray Lewis. You thought he was going to be 3 and out, top 10 pick. You know, obviously he didn't pan out the way that we projected him to. Really great kid, just wasn't a very good football player. And it just, anything can go wrong on these visits, and you just want him to be as on point as possible. And they do a great job with him right now. And that's why I think that these kids come up here. I think when they get off the plane and they get to Columbus, they think they're getting out in Iowa or Nebraska, and there's going to be cornfields and cows walking across the runway and stuff. They get to Columbus, like, wow, this is a really nice city. There's a lot of nice stuff to do. Nice, clean airport. Columbus is a great city. You know, the university has really gotten a lot nicer since I was there. The surrounding areas and stuff. So it's a big benefit to Ohio State. Speaking of officials, obviously a guy that's on everyone's mind right now is Edric Houston. I'm actually going to throw his film on real quick. He went to Bama this weekend. Nevada, do you have any consternation about it? Of course, you know, Bama they're as good as we are. They're probably better than we are at official visits because they've been more prolific at recruiting. But any consternation on Edric Moore and his Alabama visit?
Look, you always
Edric Houston, excuse me, Edric Moore.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. No, it's you always have concerns when Alabama. Anybody who says they don't have concerns when a kid's going to Bama or visiting Bama or Bama's involved with them is just silly because Bama's pulled so many kids over so many times. Having said all that, I still got him to Ohio State. Not concerned. I think Alabama's just another hat on the table. And I think he's a Buckeye. Ohio State's been his dream school for a long time. There's no way he was going to have a bad visit to Alabama. So I'm sure he's going to talk. He's going to say Alabama's moved up in my eyes. Alabama's looking good. But you got to have 2. You can only pick one. And there's no drama if there's not a second. I think Alabama finishes second. And if you're not first, you're last on in the famous words of Ricky Bobby. So I think he's a Buckeye.
Yeah, and I think Larry Johnson did good work here. I think that our scheme is a better fit. He wants to be a 4. Yeah, it's not really a 4-3, no more 4-2-5 defensive end instead of the 3. You know, that odd look that they run, that mint package that Georgia and Bama. You know, I think schematically these guys all want to play as a 4-down defensive end, like Joey Bosa, like Nick Bosa, like Chase Young. And that's a huge benefit to Ohio State. This guy's a perfect defensive end. I mean, this kid can start as a freshman. There's a chance that, you know, I assume we lose JT Tumalo after 3 years. There's a chance if Jack has a big year, he could go after 3 years. So those end spots were wide open. And after we whiffed last year, you know, I think that when these kids are all obsessed with playing time and playing early, I mean, there isn't a more devoid spot on the team than defensive end, especially if Jack Sawyer leaves early. So this is a kid that, you know, he's a must get. He's, I think, the best player in the country. Again, this is my favorite clip of him because he's literally, you know, you always wonder how these kids are. Are they prima donnas? Are they, you know, they don't want to get their hands dirty. Let me get my little pen going. But they put him at tight end. And like, I love, every good player should play both ways in high school. Like, there's no reason not to because high school games are so short and it's easy to play both ways. But he buries this kid. And, you know, he's blocking, you know, he's not scared to get his, you know, put his face on somebody. And not every defensive end who's a big, you know, 5-star superstar wants to go block a guy like an offensive tackle playing tight end. And there's multiple clips and you see the leverage. Again, this is something that, you know, like there's some guys who just have that natural like burst when they come off the ball and their hips just explode through guys. And this is one of them. Like, look at this guy. You know, and that's something that, you know, you could try to teach that, but not everybody has that snap. And that's why he's such a great defensive end because he has that explosion when he puts his hand in the dirt. And again, that's why, you know, I question how little we're in a 3-point stance versus not in a 3-point stance when we're run blocking as an offensive line. And this is why you get a 3-point because you get down in this and you come off the rock and it's no different than being in a track stance, coming out of the blocks in the 100-meter dash. Like there isn't a sprinter on earth that doesn't get down in blocks to come off the rock and win the 100 meters. And when you watch these defensive ends, the really good ones are always, when it's time to go, they're in a 3 point stance coming off the rock. They're not in a 2 point. They're not, and some guys do it, but I don't think your leverage is the same when you're in a 2 point as opposed to a 3 point. Uh, get those questions going again. Nevada, Aaron Scott is a guy. I think we get more questions about him on our board than anybody. I think he's a Buckeye. I think Ohio State thinks he's a Buckeye. I think that, in the modern day of NIL, I think that the easiest way to figure out if people, how they feel is, do we need to give them more NIL money? And I think Ohio State is good with the offer they made. And where are you at with Aaron Scott right now?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think Ohio State feels good. Ohio State feels like they're, they've appropriately, positioned themselves from an NIL standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, from a depth chart standpoint. Um, some kids just like to, yeah, I mean, a lot of kids, most kids like to have a little bit of drama, like to have and I think Aaron's kind of enjoying the attention. And frankly, I get it, man. This is one of those times when you have people from all over the world hanging on your every tweet, your every Instagram post, your every sidelong glance. What type of, if you're Rico McCoy, what type of T-shirt you wear. So I think he's enjoying it. He's enjoying his moment in the sun. But I think he's a Buckeye. I really do. Everything I've gotten out of this weekend was positive, and I think he's going to be a Buckeye in the end.
I do too. I mean, I just think that it seems obvious. But again, I think that these kids benefit from having a little drama. I mean, which I hate. It's stupid, but these kids, they all want the most fanfare, the most hype. If you're just again someone that is just easy and no drama, and you commit early. It's almost like the fans care less about you. Like again, I always go back to JJ Smith. JJ Smith's probably the best player in the country. Him or Edric Houston, I think, are probably the top two players in the country. JJ's been committed to us for a while now, 6-8 months, whatever it's been. And if he was the guy that was uncommitted right now, and he was visiting Florida State, Miami, and Georgia, and Texas A&M, and Texas, and Akron, and Kent State, and Utah, and New Hampshire, like he's gone to every school I think in the country. And then he goes to signing day, and he does like the little hat thing and puts the Ohio State hat on. I think people just naturally like him more. They're more excited about him, instead of the kids that are less drama. Like for me, I like the kids that are actually less drama. The kids that are like, hey, I'm in, I'm good, I'm gonna go surf around, check places out, but I'm a Buckeye. But I don't know. It's funny how that kind of works because like the ultimate was Terrell. I mean, Terrell obviously is the guy that postponed his signing day, and I mean everybody knew he was coming to Ohio State, or at least anybody that followed you knew that he was coming to Ohio State. And, I didn't think, I was like, why on earth would you go play for Rich Rod in Michigan, which is, on the downswing, versus coming to play at Ohio State where we were crushing everybody. But when he committed, it was like a seismic event. It was huge, as opposed to if he committed like before his junior year and just wrote it out for whatever.
Well, here let me just give you a little fun fact about JJ Smith. And this, we always like to try to give these podcasts, and we say, hey, we want to make you a smarter fan, a more intelligent fan, a more thoughtful fan. Give you stuff that you don't know. It's not just give you the usual pablum about Ohio State or just recite the party line. Here's a fun fact on JJ Smith. He doesn't have his NIL deal done with Ohio State. They don't have that locked down yet. So wrap that one around your head right now. JJ Smith, who's committed to Ohio State, number one, number two player in the class, big time kid out of Florida, big time wide receiver. He doesn't have like the NIL deal done. It's still kind of loosey goosey with Ohio State, kind of like we'll figure it out, it'll get done, blah 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 blah. That's where it's at right now. I find that absolutely fascinating, and I think it speaks to JJ Smith's character, though. I mean, JJ's a kid that knows where he wants to go, isn't going to make the decision based solely upon NIL, isn't going to make the decision based on NIL at all. So, I mean, not to say he's not going to get an NIL deal, because he's absolutely going to get an NIL deal, but these kids, the right kids, just want something that's fair. They don't want to get something that's below market or something that they get screwed, but they're not looking for the bag, and they're not looking for the whole thing. And JJ Smith, who could get the bag from a lot of places, has been committed to Ohio State, is our number one cheerleader, our number one recruiter, and he doesn't even have his NIL deal locked in yet. So I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, and JJ is a kid that flat out would get paid. He gets paid or can get paid or has been offered to get paid to go visit campuses. Like, hey, because if JJ shows up, it's like magically all these other kids are interested in coming to play. So you go to Florida, go to Miami. There's a reason. I mean, he's taking all these visits. And again, I'm not saying that it's happening, but it's been offered. I know that for a fact. So, I mean, these guys that are 5-star guys, like they say, hey, come check the campus out, whatever. It's a different world. And again, I think that the benefit is it's kind of like being an unrestricted free agent in the NBA or the NFL or hockey, where it's like, ideally you want to get to go to the place you want to go to and get the maximum dollars for the deal. So you got to have your agents like shop it around a little bit, and you got to go talk to these collectives, and you got to say, hey, what's he get if he comes here? How much does he get if he comes here? Like, this is what's on the table. And then, these collectives have to value what's real, what's fake, what's phony, what's a real number. Again, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now, and it's honestly crazy. Oh, we got a super chat. D Sunny, welcome in, my dog. Before NIL, and again, appreciate this as always. If you guys ever give us a super chat, it's an automatic answer on the question, so we appreciate that. Before NIL, what were some of the things coaches could promise? Must hear recruits, what perks did superstars get? Well, I mean, obviously there was NIL before NIL. There was a lot of under the table stuff. I mean, go read LSU's NCAA infraction thing where they had to vacate 4 years of games because they played Vidal Alexander. They were funneling money through a church to get to Vidal. So I mean, these guys in the South are really sophisticated when it comes to feeding money. These bag men. It's not like you envision a bag man as some big fat white dude, with a 10-gallon hat on and spurs, and he shows up with a bag and he drops it off on the porch, at the kid's house. And then he waddles away. Like, that's not really how it works. It's like, it's really sophisticated operations where it's never traced back to the coach. There's 8 layers of removal from the coach to the player. But it happens. And it's not some pie in the sky thing. It's not some, us big meanies. And again, I'm not acting like Ohio State wasn't innocent either. Like, I mean, there's obviously instances where we saw our guys getting paid too. So we're not exactly saints, but it's a sophisticated thing. You got anything on that, Nevada? Because you've been around the game longer than I have, but I was in the game. Man. But
yeah, no, I've seen it all. I've seen and heard it all. I've seen it all from the donations to the church stuff was really was a good one, and that was getting kind of worn out right there because that was very, very useful. But as you said about Ohio State, I mean, Google Derek Morris NCAA violations Ohio State, and you'll see what Ohio State tried to do for Derek. And we're just not very good. We just, I'm not saying that Ohio State wasn't involved in some chicanery back in the days, but we just were never very good at it. We weren't as good as the SEC schools. We didn't have let's go to the casino and win the jackpots on the machines, or let's not, the donations to the church or the payments to the mentors for summer camp or any of that stuff. We were kind of ham-handed when we did it, but we tried to do it. We were trying to do it. And like I said, the Derek Morris thing has not gotten a lot of run, but we just got caught with our hand in the cookie jar on that one. And it was not good. It was not a good look at all.
Yeah, I mean, we suck at it. We're not very slick. We try to directly do stuff. I mean, this is kind of the story of what we do. And the funny thing is, Derek Morris never even panned out. I mean, it wasn't like he went to NC State and stunk. Might have played like for a year, and then I think he was in the NFL for like a year, maybe a year and a half. So it wasn't like, and again, I know he was like the god of football when he came out, but he stunk in college because I was a year after him, and I was like, oh my god, Derek Morris, the next Orlando Pace, I'll never get to play. Then he never even plays a snap at Ohio State. And then I remember we played down at NC State, and I saw the guy, and I saw him on the field, and he wasn't playing. I think he was a backup, and I looked at him, and I was like, he really isn't like anything. Like, I mean, everybody's like, oh, this guy's going to be the next like superstar, and that's why again, I always wonder who does these rankings, because I was like, that guy sucked. I don't even think he got drafted, but it is what it is. Like, I mean, and again, but we committed infractions to get that guy, and he ended up sucking. So if you're gonna do it, you might as well go get like a Laramie Tunsil or a kid like that. Again, the classic one is like Ole Miss, because I think it was in 12 when I was working there. It was my last year with Ohio State, and like Ole Miss, who was terrible, pulls Laquan Treadwell, Robert Kimdichie, and Laramie Tunsil. And those guys are all first round picks, all three and out. Kimdichie was the number one player in the country. He was really good. I thought Tunsil should have been. Tunsil was the best player. It was the best player by far. He's the best offensive tackle I've ever seen in high school. Like when I watched his film, I was like, he looks like an NFL player. He looked like he was like 30 years old when he was doing the one-on-one pass rush stuff. And I was like, that guy is unbelievable. And he got the bag, and he went like I think eighth in the draft. He had the gas mask incident, but the Browns screwed up by not taking him in the draft because I think they traded down from wherever. I don't know if they were at 1 or 2. That might have been the Carson Wentz draft. I can't remember, but
So,
I
Kirk, have you
digress.
ever been anywhere where anybody had the gas mask, where they were smoking pot and had the gas mask on and doing that? Like, I'd never seen that before. So that was, it was like, I thought he was like some deep sea diver or something like that for a submersible down to the Marianas Trench. But I guess he had the gas mask, and I thought that was pretty clever.
I mean, I was I was around plenty of guys that smoked pot, but like I never saw a guy in a gas mask. I mean, again, I think that was. I don't know if that's supposed to make you like more high or something, or if it's supposed to make you like. I'm sure that there's supposed to be some way that like it makes it more concentrated, but I don't understand the chemistry behind weed. I'm not a smoker. It was bizarre, and obviously it was an attempt by his, I think it was his stepdad to like blackmail him or something, and that stepdad's an idiot because it backfired. He still won, I think, eighth overall, and then he signed the richest deal in NFL history for an offensive tackle, so he's made probably $200 million in the league and still going, for the Texans. He's actually blocking for CJ Stroud now, so CJ's got himself a good couple of tackles down there. They actually have a pretty decent line for him. What do you think? You want to move on to Lincoln, our boy Lincoln Keenholz?
Let's do it.
All right, so we're going to break down kind of the quarterback derby. What do we expect? And we're going to run some Lincoln Keenholz tape from South Dakota. I'm glad they put that on the middle of the field because I wasn't sure if it was South Dakota, North Dakota, West Dakota, Montana, but somewhere out there where he's from. But this is a kid that's really killing it right now in summer conditioning. I've talked to some really good sources in the program, and they said this kid is just an absolute, I can't swear, but he's an MFer, like is what he was described as. And he is not scared of anything. He's super athletic. Again, you've seen him doing the windmill dunks and all that kind of stuff. And I like that. Like I like guys that are more than just, shooters or whatever. But he isn't scared of anything. And this is a guy that, with his mobility and his competitive fire, it's a guy to watch for. I think that sometimes, with quarterbacks, when they have a little bit less infrastructure, when they don't have a great line and they don't have great receivers and they still are really productive and they still are really, really good. I think that excites coaches and scouts. You see that in the NFL every year. Like with the kid from Kentucky, Will Levis. I know he slipped to the second round, but people are like, well, Will Levis is playing at Kentucky. Their line stinks. Their skill guys stink, and he was still productive. So imagine if he was at Ohio State and CJ Stroud was at Kentucky. How would you do the grades? But I'm excited about this kid. He's a kid that I like him and Devin Brown a lot just because of the mobility. And again, Colin McCord's the guy that's going to have to, if we're up against it and, the tackles can't hang in there, they better get his PF Flyers on and get running. But Nevada, what do you like about Lincoln Keenholz, and what have you heard about him?
Well, I mean, he is clearly the star of the off-season workouts. There's absolutely no question. And, when I've talked to every person I've talked to, he's been the first name out of their mouth. And that is something, because generally you'll get this guy, that guy, this guy. Everybody talks about Lincoln. Everybody talks about Lincoln. I don't know. It's because they didn't expect much out of him. He was late in the process. He was lowly regarded. They'd never seen anybody from South Dakota before, whatever it was. But this kid's a player. And this kid has absolutely made believers out of his fellow players, and is slowly but surely earning the attention of the coaching staff. So as crazy as it sounds, I don't. Will he be a factor this year in the quarterback room? Hard to imagine he could do that, climbing over guys that have been there 2 years and 1 year respectively. But for the future, I think he's going to be a player. I think he's absolutely going to be a player. He's got that huge chip on his shoulder, from coming in the way that he is. But as you said, he is completely unafraid. And in testing, he is just blowing people away. So his athleticism is elite. And so don't let the small school or the stature or anything else fool you about him. He is absolutely a player. We'll see how it translates to the field in the fall, but he can do it all. He can do it all athletically. He can throw the ball. He can run. He's smart. He's relentless. He's the first one in there in the morning. I mean, he is one driven kid. So, like I said, if I had to pick one kid that was going to be my shocker surprise for the year, it would be Lincoln. And remember, you heard it, because I'm telling you, he's gonna be a player. I really really do believe that.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be wide open. I know a lot of people are, it's McCord, and, you got to treat this like you're diffusing a bomb, because if you make one of the young guys the starter, then Kyle's probably going to transfer instantly. And this is kind of how it is nowadays, especially at the quarterback position, especially at the transfer portal. But Lincoln, I mean, he just has that it factor. And people that have been around the program for a while that I've talked to say it's a lot like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow with fast twitch fiber, which Joe Burrow, again, is top 3-4 quarterback in the NFL. Probably going to make $60 million a year when he gets a second contract, but that's who he's getting compared to. And I hate to say that out loud, because obviously Joe Burrow is one of the greatest players in the history of the state of Ohio, one of the greatest college football single season probably ever, that LSU 2019 year. But that's who he's getting compared to. And like, again, some of these guys, they just have it. Like Troy Smith had it. There's certain guys when you're around them. Terrell Pryor had it. And I think Lincoln, from the guys that I talked to that I trust in the program, they think he's a beast, and they think that he's not scared of anything. He's fearless. And you want your quarterback to be kind of a dog. You don't want to be, because I've played with quarterbacks that were soft and they were pampered and just, pussies. And I don't like, it doesn't end well. Guys that are just been coddled their whole lives, they don't end up playing, and they end up being busts. And this kid ain't it. This kid's, he hasn't been handed anything. He's got a massive chip on his shoulder. He feels like he should have rated higher. So I'm super excited to see what this kid can do. Again, with major talent around him, because again, whoever wins the Derby this year, there's no guarantee that they win it next year, because next year when you've got JJ and Ennis and Tate, I mean, you're gonna have some dudes to throw the ball to, same as this year. So it's gonna be really exciting. Diggs, this is a great question. Hey, Scoop, love the show. Appreciate the love on the show. Thank you guys. We love your feedback on the show. Best show, hands down. Question, and I'm gonna start with you, Nevada. Do you think selling the jack position is hurting our chances with the elite defensive ends?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't. I think that it's something that it's good fodder for Ohio State fans to talk about, and I think it's become kind of one of those little talisman when you want to say something bad about the OSU defense, you say, oh, that stupid jack position and stuff like that. So I'm not even sure how often we really were in the jack last year. I think the big thing for us in terms of getting defensive ends, as you pointed out earlier in the show, is that four-man line. That's what the spot that the defensive ends do not want to be a two-gapper. They don't want to be a guy that's like tying up guys so that the linebackers can flow and hit. They want to be the guy at the defensive end spot, making the big play, making the sack, like a Chase Young, like a Nick Bosa, like a Joey Bosa. And Ohio State gives them an opportunity to do that. And that's why you got guys like Jack Sawyer and JT. And, I think that's going to continue to be a selling point for Ohio State. I know Larry Johnson sells that aggressively, and I think that's going to carry the day with Houston.
Yeah, I think the problem with the jack is when you run something like that 3-down look, you have to have total buy-in. And I don't think Larry Johnson was bought into it. I don't think the guys in his room are bought into it. The guys in his room were recruited to be 4-down guys. Like Larry Johnson's coached for 40 years. He did it. Penn State was never in a 3-down set for, I think, actually, I take that back. I think in 2006, they did run an odd defense for 1 year, and then they went right back to 4-down because it was a disaster. It was easy to stop. But, when you run something like a 3-down look, like that jack look, and you run it at such a low percentage, it's really hard to be proficient at it. It's something where you can't get half pregnant with running a 3-down look with that jack thing. And I really think that it screwed Jack Sawyer. That Jack Sawyer, frankly, was terrible at the jack position. And I think that it was mostly because of what he was asked to do. Because when they brought it in, it was, hey, we're going to attack. We're going to be downhill. You're going to be blitzing. You're going to be getting after the quarterback. Like you're the guy that's the focal point that has to get home. But it turned into, you're a run stopper. You're basically like playing like nose guard. You're like taking up blockers to free up Tommy Eichenberg or Steel Chambers to try to make the tackle. And when you don't rep it enough, it's not like Jack being uncomfortable with it, but Tommy was uncomfortable with it because Tommy, didn't get to his gap multiple times, and we gave up 70-yard runs against Michigan and against Georgia in that jack because the guys weren't used to hitting their fits, And again, I don't know how much they repped it in practice. I'm sure they repped it a little bit, but when Jim Knowles ran it at Oklahoma State, he ran at a much higher percentage than he did last year in his first year as a coordinator at Ohio State. So again, I watched all the film. I studied the games. I hope we never see it again, frankly. I hope that we run the 4-down stuff because I feel like not only is Jack Sawyer going to be transcendent running as a regular defensive end, but Tommy and Steele, I think, are much better in that 4-down look because that's what we run 90% of the time. You can't just dabble in the jack stuff, and it screwed the rotations up last year because the way the rotations were, basically it was Zach Harrison was the starting defensive end, JT was the starting defensive end in regular base defense, but Jack Sawyer was like the starting jack. So, but again, like when you barely run the jack, it's like being, okay, you're the starter in the 2 tight end offense. Okay, well, we run 2 tight ends like 10% of the time, so that doesn't really mean anything. But I hope it's gone. I think it's gone. We didn't see it in the spring. I think that Larry, I think Jim Knowles and Ryan Day and Larry Johnson had to come to Jesus meeting at some point and said, hey, guys, if they just did a self-scout and looked at how ineffective and the lack of proficiency from it, it's probably gone for good, I'd imagine, because like those guys just weren't. It was terrible when we ran it. And again, these coaches, especially on defense, when they're trying to shore everything up, like they got to look at what they're the best at. And when we're 4 down and you've got JT, Ty Hamilton, Ty Leak, Mike Hall, and Jack Sawyer, and you pick 4 of those guys and put them in, like that's really good. So I don't know why you'd want to mess with that. And again, if a guy's not a traditional zero nose and he's not taught to be a zero nose, and you put a guy like Teron Vincent in there or Jerron Cage, like it doesn't end well. And this is another thing. I think J-Bags, and this is something I talk about all the time, is like I don't think that you can ever go back to the basic 4-3. So J-Bags, this is a question. And I'll let you answer it first, Nevada. He says we should just return to the basic 4-3 and move to the 3-4. Hell with all this FBS defensive BS with the 4-2-5. What is your thought on that, Nevada?
I think the 4-2-5 is here to stay. I think that's like, I think that's pretty much the defense that you got to run, and especially against today's offenses, you just don't see 3 linebackers very often. You sure as heck don't see 4 linebackers anymore. Nobody else is running the Oklahoma 54 or anything like that. But I think the 4-2-5 is pretty much base, and whether you call that 5th guy a bandit, an adjuster, a nickel, a strong safety, a free, whatever you call them. I think that's pretty much what you got to play, and I think Ohio State realizes that. I think that it's what Ohio State's best at. It's when Ohio State's had their most success, and frankly, I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Shout out Kentucky. A lot of Kentucky popping up in the chat. Appreciate you guys. No, I think the biggest thing is if you go back and watch football 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you saw a fullback. Like fullbacks don't exist anymore. And you saw more 2 tight ends. Like the rise of the 3 receiver set on offense is what killed the 4-3 defense, because you have to be able to match up with that slot receiver. And most Sam linebackers can't do that. Imagine like an old school Sam linebacker for back in the day when I played was Bobby Carpenter. So Bobby 6'4", 260, whatever he was. Like, I mean, you put him on like an Anthony Gonzalez slot receiver or a Mecca. Put him on. So you got to have Bobby. When you're in a 4-3, you're going to have Bobby Carpenter or even Darren Lee. If you want to go back to the urban era, Darren Lee is a walkout Sam. He has to check Emeka Egbuka. And I'm telling you, like when you get that matchup as offensive coordinator and you got a linebacker on Emeka, that guy's going to get killed. He's going to get worn out. It's going to be just a bloodbath. So that's why you have to play nickel defense. You have to play. Now, do I think we should play a true corner at that nickel more so we match up and we're a little bit more proficient coverage? Absolutely. But I just think that the days of that 4-3 Because the 4-3, like when you played I formation and there were tight end in the game and you're running power and ISO in the olden days, like yeah, you could run three linebackers. I mean, I'm sure we still run three linebackers when we play Wisconsin, we play Iowa, kind of the old guard type offenses. But the majority of the teams we play they're spread. I mean, they're three receivers, and I bet we're in three receivers probably 80% of the time. So there isn't a team on this earth that's going to run three linebackers versus a Mecca Buka in the slot. I mean, because he'll get destroyed. And when we used to play teams that would match up like that, like we played Iowa in 05 and 06. And Anthony Gonzalez had the two best games of his career because Iowa did not play nickel defense. We knew that. So they would walk their Sam linebacker out over Gonzo. And go check out Anthony Gonzalez's stat lines from those two games because he absolutely murdered them. And we knew that they didn't match personnel. So I just think modern football, it's more spread out than the olden days. Back even when I played when we ran ISO and power to death, the old Jim Tressel covered wagon offense. So that's why I think that the 4-3, if you're on the 4-3, we're going to give up 500 yards receiving. If you play a good team. Now, if you're playing at Rutgers or New Hampshire or some scrub team, then it's you can do whatever you want. What else you guys got? The old Y tackle 6. I love this stuff. I see the Dylan Stewart being recruited. I think that they pitch all these guys as true defensive ends. Like all these kids want to be the next Chase Young, the next Bosa. So I think you could mention the Jack thing for a second, but I think the second you start talking to these kids about anything other than being a pass rushing game, because that is kind of our silver bullet right now, pun intended, is that we run a true four down where Georgia and Bama run more of this odd, they call it mint defense, where it's like a three down with like a buck, which is like kind of like a stand up weak side defensive end, but they run a lot more of a three down ish type front, and we don't. And a lot of these kids, man, they want to be outside shoulder that tackle, pass rushing like Nick Bosa did, like Chase Young did. And if I'm Larry Johnson and I'm sitting in that film room with mom and dad and 5-star defensive end son, I'm saying, look, this is what we do on defense. You're going to put your kid on the outside shoulder. Third down, he's getting loose and he gets to go get a sack and get 10 sacks and be a top 5 pick in the draft. Like I've done 3 times in the last, since really the 16 draft. Yeah, the 16 draft. So, it's a formula that you don't need to change when it comes to recruiting 5-star DNs. Nevada, we've gone 40. Man, these things fly by. I think I'm gonna wrap this thing up. What do you got anything to close us out on? Our board is on. If you guys aren't on Buckeye Scoop, our board is crazy right now. Oh my god, it just is nonstop. But anything you want to wrap this thing up with, Nevada?
Nah, just don't worry. If you read any stuff coming out about Houston, don't worry. Don't freak out. Just relax. Take a deep breath. Everything's going to be okay. I think Ohio State's got it under control. Don't believe the hype. I think we're in good shape. Ohio State likes where they are, and so just relax. Have a nice adult beverage and just chill.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great mentality. So I'm gonna wrap this thing. Appreciate you guys as always. Thank you as we race to 20,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much. Keep spreading the good word. And if your friends, your family, coworkers that love Ohio State content, send them a link to this podcast. Tell them to sign up. It's free to subscribe here. We appreciate you guys as always. We love when you guys shout out where you're from. Again, it's so fun to see the different places you guys are watching from. It never gets old, and we appreciate you guys so much. If you enjoyed this content, please click like on the way out the door. Subscribe to the channel, and also click that little alert bell so so you get an alert on your phone when we go live. We appreciate you guys so much. If you enjoy this content and you want a true, clean, troll-free message board experience, join BuckeyeScoop.com. We are killing it right now. We are killing the game. It has been awesome. And a fantastic community of the smartest Ohio State fans all together talking football. Basically 24/7. I'm on the site just basically nonstop, always answering questions, bringing inside information. Bill Green had a great breakdown on the defensive side of the recruiting. Sierra, I believe, is bringing the offense tomorrow. But we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you guys for everything you guys do for this channel. We're really, really proud to be at near 20,000 subscribers. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.